Welcome back to the Nullify Take, where we've got the TNT takes for you on Survivor US 42, episode, I believe, 7. Some places are saying episode 8 because of the double header that we had last week, but let's call it episode 7 here for the sake of this podcast. I'm joined today by Jake, my co-host, as always, and a very special guest that we were able to get onto the channel today, Kiran Naidoo from Survivor South Africa. He's getting us one step closer to becoming the quantified take instead of the nullified take here, because we've got someone with real experience. Kiran, it's been a while since we've last spoken. How are you?
Chris, I'm doing so well, man. It's so great to be with you here today and to chat some Survivor. Jake, it's also lovely to meet you. And yeah, things are good. It has been way too long since we've last spoken, so I'm looking forward to catching up.
Yeah, well, I rate you highly as someone with a brain for the game, and we won't give anything more away for those US fans that are watching this that maybe want to go watch your season at some stage. We've had some former castmates of yours on the channel this season as well, and I think Survivor 42 has got an all-time great cast. I was very impressed with Survivor South Africa Immunity Islands cast, which I thought was a great cast as well. How have you felt about, I guess, Survivor 42 as a whole, and how do you think it stacks up now in this new era of Survivor, now that we've seen everything for a second time? We've had 41 and now 42.
I've really enjoyed it. It's quite funny. So I mean, when I played, I was quite a strategic player, but I watch it, as a very casual fan. So I root for all the people who are big in the edit and are larger than life, and there's not much thought that generally goes into it when I'm watching. So it's been really nice to watch. There've been some really heartfelt moments. There've been some really entertaining moments. I've enjoyed Jonathan's physical prowess. So it's been really great, easy to watch. I think I've got accustomed to this new style and new format. And so, yeah, I'm just really enjoying it. It does feel a bit like an older season of Survivor strategically, which isn't the worst thing. It's also sometimes nice to sit back and watch, and the episodes aren't throwing you for a loop. You kind of know where things are going, and you can just enjoy the characters. And I think it really speaks volumes of the great cast they have, because a season like this, where it has been fairly predictable so far, you can still enjoy it because you enjoy the characters who are actually on the show.
It's an interesting point you bring up, because I feel like in the latter stages of Survivor US in its evolution, a lot of the times the edit felt like it needed to outsmart the viewer, or keep certain things from the viewer so that, hey, they can bamboozle you when it gets to the actual vote. But for me, as a fan of the show, someone who loves to analyze and obviously commentate on it, I love seeing the plan come together. I love seeing the behind the scenes, and then seeing a plan executed really well, and having a clear understanding of where someone actually went wrong in the game, so you could hopefully have somewhat of an informed opinion about it, I guess. I do know that with Chanel, she's done a lot of exit press. I've had people message me on social media to say, hey, you really need to listen to Chanel's exit press. There's some things that weren't shown on the show in regards to how she got out. Obviously, for the sake of this podcast, we can only go by the edit, and I didn't want to watch it because I wanted to come in here with, I guess, an unbiased mind to what she said on those interviews. So I will go check that out at a later stage. Apparently, the one that she did with RAP is really good. I'm sure most people will go and watch that. I'll definitely go and listen to that at a later stage as well. Jake, welcome back here to the podcast. How did you feel about this week? And do you feel like we are continuing to see a great season develop here? Or do you feel like we're starting to lose a little bit of steam now that we are in the merge portion of this game?
I think it's still going strong. I've felt every episode has been solid. There hasn't been really any amazing episodes, but they've just all been consistently really good. And I am getting a bit worried about the amount of advantages coming into play, especially with one particular person, but I think it'll all be okay in the end. So we'll see.
I've got a really hot theory. I mean, we're jumping ahead, but on the nullified take, we do have a little bit more of a loose format to the show in any case. So while we're on the topic of Drea, with all of these different advantages that she's currently got, Kiran, if you were Drea out there with all of these toys, how fearful would you be that you could make a fool out of yourself by misplaying this? Because, I mean, I feel like no one girl should have all this much power, to reference Kanye West here. And I feel like she's got so much power. She has got all the potential to go down as a legend or flame out at this point.
Yeah, Chris, I'd be terrified. There's something stressful about holding power in your hand, and I mean that's if you have one. You know, there's so much that goes on in your mind. It really does introduce a lot more paranoia. That's for sure, because you're worried about playing it correctly. You're worried about who knows. Yeah, it really can be as much of a curse, if not more, than it is an actual advantage. So yeah, I think the good thing though is who actually holds those advantages. You know, Drea is an athlete, and I think she's competed professionally or at a very, very high level. And you can see just watching her play, she has ice running through her veins, whether for better or for worse. Like some of the arguments she had with Marianne at tribal council, I was like, that you shouldn't just say yes. Don't fight about silly things. And whilst that part of her personality is a disadvantage, I think it could be an advantage in how she plays her advantages, because she won't necessarily overthink things. She'll just call it as she sees it, which I don't necessarily think is good. But I think if you have 4 advantages, best not to overthink it. Just play it. You know, don't think about all the different permutations. Just play it, because chances are you're going to get at least one of them right, and you need to be around to play all 4. So yeah, I think the right person has it. I think it's ridiculous that one person can amass 4. I definitely think 43 will have an expiry date on half of them. I mean, I don't really know how powerful that amulet actually is. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting times. It's almost like a simulation where we can ask ourselves, what would a person do if they had enough advantages to last from merge all the way till the end game? And now we have it. So let's see whether it's a good or a bad thing.
Can she play it correctly? Can she blindside people with this? I mean, 4 advantages, like you said there. You know, you've got 2 people outside of Drea that's got idols at this moment in the game as well, and then you've got 2 more people with amulet advantages as well. So it's really, in my opinion, Drea's game to lose or win at this stage based on what we've seen, because she's got so much power. And I've been liking this cast the whole season. I still do, but I'm starting to feel like I might be Drea's number 1 fan here on the podcast. I've had her as my number 1 player for 3 weeks in a row. We haven't spoken about who's going to be the number 1, 2, and 3 player yet in this podcast, but I've got a feeling she may feature somewhere in that group of 3 players again, just with everything that's going on. But let's get into the actual episode and start here right at the beginning. As they get back to camp, they've just pulled off a vote. We find out that there's a few people that have been left out of the majority, and those people are Tori Chanel and Marianne. And Omar is starting to play an undercover agent type of game where he is pretending to be on the outs. He didn't have to vote, so that gives him cover here in this specific point in the game. And Jake, you know, we've both been on the Omar watch throughout the season. We've said this guy looks like he's a dangerous player, unassuming. People might not see him coming. What do you think here of Omar's double agent play, and specifically his ability to continue to play that throughout the end of this episode, because he does end up again throwing a vote away to pretend not to be in the in here?
I'm not gonna lie, when I saw like the preview for this episode that he was gonna play both sides, I was like, this is where he flames out. Like, it's all gonna go up in flames in one episode. Everyone's gonna realize he's playing both sides and just take him out. But this is high risk, high reward stuff. Like, if they find out that you're like feeding information to people on the bottom, that's dangerous. But he's really pulling it off here. And as you said, he even threw a vote on Romeo at the end of the episode to kind of cover his tracks, which I think is brilliant. And I know that you and I have been really high on him, and we may be a bit biased, or I may be a bit biased because he's on my draft, but I think he's playing killer right now. And as long as he can stay undercover, then he's going to be safe for quite a while.
Yeah, so Kiran, just to give you in on the rankings that we've been giving people every week here on the show, we've had ourselves, and this will also give you some preparation as we get to the end of the podcast to think about your own rankings here, and also guests' rankings. So it's not just myself and Jack, but obviously we have a bit of an influence on where things have been going since we've consistently ranked throughout the season. Jonathan and Omar is tied for first place at the moment with High in second or third, and then Drea has made some real big strides in the last 3 weeks due to, I think, my placement of her in the game at this point. So Omar is ranked quite high, but you're someone, Kiran, who has played a little bit of a double agent game yourself, working in between different alliances. How much skill does it take to pull something like this off? And do you think Omar has got the ability to do it based on the edit, obviously, that you've seen so far here this season?
It is risky to do it, but I mean, again, high risk, high reward. I think watching this episode and seeing what happened in the fake merge episode, I remember just thinking, yes, Omar is going to shoot himself in the foot, and the reason for that is just the sheer amount of excitement he has in reveling in this double agent role is too high. So, and what I mean by that is you need to be a double agent out of necessity. It almost feels like he's being a double agent because he enjoys the thrill of being able to talk to both sides. And what that means is at some point he runs the risk of just overplaying it. Because as the numbers dwindle, people are going to force you to be like, listen, mate, you need to pick a side. And so coming out of this episode, it's really important that he has voted for Romeo with the blessing of the majority, right? If he's done it just to continue playing a double agent without communicating that, people are going to be really pissed off with him. And one of the key things about being a double agent is you actually tell both sides everything. Except there's one little disclaimer that you only give to the side you really intend on working with, which is, I just want to let you know I've told them everything, but I'm with you. The other side doesn't get that, but they get everything else. And so I don't know if he's doing that. That's the thing I would look out for. I think he's in a really good position. It just really depends on whether he caveats it correctly, because a lot of people in this position end up just getting carried away and trying to be double agent 3 or 4 days longer than they should be. So that's the thing I'd watch out for with him. I do think he has the right personality for it. I think he's unassuming. I don't think people think of him as being too threatening, and they genuinely enjoy him as a personality. So all the right makings of it. I'm just a bit worried about how eager he sounds in doing it.
Yeah, and I agree with you. That key bit of information, letting your side know about what it is that you're doing, so you're not out there on an island and really selling the reason that you have to be a double agent. Because when you look at this group, how threatening is the likes of Tori, Chanel, Marianne, and Romeo really as a group to that majority alliance? And I think that the sell here, and maybe this is something that he is telling his main alliance about, is that Marianne has got an extra vote and she's got an immunity idol. So at some point he needs to gain her trust so that they can blindside her with the idol in her pocket. And that's probably, I'm assuming, the angle that he's using here. Marianne, early in the episode here, is very aware about the fact that she is not currently in that majority and she's worried about it. She talks about this giving her flashbacks of elementary school and not fitting in with the cool kids and things like that. Kiran, as someone that's played this game, how quickly does these bonds get formed out there? And do you, like, I've heard other players say sometimes that it can be like high school kind of, because it's a bit of a popularity contest out there. Could you relate a little bit to Marianne here, sort of feeling out of place, I guess, in the game?
So, I mean, I can relate to her position in the fact that I've seen it happen. Like when I played, I was fortunate enough to be very well insulated and friends with everyone. I think that people ignoring Marianne and considering her as someone to get rid of soon is silly. Given her personality type and given the fact that she talks a lot, I find it incredibly difficult to think that she wouldn't have mentioned she feels like this and her experience in high school. And someone like that is easy to bring on side if you actually just give them a home. If you actually treat them with respect and you bring them into how you're playing the game, you will have an exceptionally loyal ally. And you don't necessarily have to tell them everything, but you need to let them feel protected and safe. And I find it astounding that no one in the majority is doing that yet. Like the likes of Omar, Lindsay, Jonathan, who are her previous tribe mates. One of them should be keeping her by their side and say, listen, I know you're currently on the outs, but I'm working on it. And maybe that's what Omar is doing, because she will be a fierce ally, deeper into the end game, especially once that majority of 8 people, if I have my maths correct, start to split. And the thing with US Survivor is I have no doubt that the conversations are happening. They're just not showing it yet. But I think Marianne is someone who is a great ally to have, in the sense that I think she seems to be very predictable in how good-hearted she is. Whereas someone like Romeo is, I don't know how to place him. He seems very erratic. So I feel a lot of sympathy for Marianne. And I just look at the reverse and I think, why is someone not picking her up and keeping her as a close ally?
Yeah, Jake, we spoke a lot about Taku as a very strong unit. I mean, this whole preseason, the edit showed us that Taku is going to stick together very closely. They're not going to be infiltrated easily. And we even have that episode at the merge where the likes of Lindsay and Omar actually saves Marianne and Jonathan a lot earlier in the game, saying we don't want this to be divided. So I think there might be some truth to what Kiran is saying in regards to certain conversations that we're not seeing. We at least see Lindsay trying to console her here after the vote and having a bit of a conversation, even though Lindsay was a little bit missing, I guess, in this episode as well. Are you shocked, Jake, how quickly these alliances and pre-merge alliances have just kind of like fractured at the moment? You've got Hai and Mike, targeting Chanel. You've got Drea suddenly not that close to her coach, Romeo, who was coaching her through the game. A bit of inside joke there, Kiran. And then also, it just seems like things have fractured very quickly, and there's not that much allegiances to some of these players that worked with them prior to the merge.
Yeah, it's surprising, but at the same time, the merge, it just changes everything. You meet new people, and you kind of start to forget like your bond with the other players that you had previously, and you're just like, oh wow, I really like this new thing that's going on. Like with Drea specifically, this big alliance that's happening. She's like, whoa, like I'm in a really big power position here. Sorry, Romeo. I guess we're not that close anymore. Which that was like probably one of the last duos that I would guess that would break up. But I think it's mainly just because the merge just changes everything. And we did get to see a little bit of foreshadowing, I guess, with the Taku 4 with some of the kind of petty things going on back at their camp before the merge. I didn't realize that they would be trying to target her so quickly, but it's just the merge, I think. Just everything changes so quickly.
It's interesting because I feel like Survivor in the past, sometimes what it's done is it's kind of forced these cross-tribal alliances by doing things like swaps in the game and bringing different mechanics into it to try and force that. But I feel like a season like this, which is a lot more pure in the sense that there was no tribe swaps, proves that if you cast correctly and you have certain people on different tribes that have things in common, they're always going to gravitate towards each other in any case when they get to the merge. And I think having the 3 tribes separately like this, going in with equal numbers, 4-4-4, allowed a lot of strategic players a lot more space to and room to make those moves that they wanted to make in regards to getting rid of some key targets here in the early merge game. Now, I do want to touch on a player that's really been impressing me, Kiran, Mike, the oldest castaway here this season. I think he's slowly but surely someone that myself and Jake have been talking about. He's always been there. He's getting an edit every single episode since the first episode. Like, are we sleeping on this guy? Could he actually go and win the show? He seems to have a little bit of strategy to him, but his social game, I feel like, is off the Richter scale at the moment, and how he is connecting with different people here. Once again, this episode, we see him spend some time with Omar, someone that he would not normally spend time with in a daily life, talking about things like religion and that, but being open to it and not being afraid to open himself, I guess, and making these connections. What do you think of Mike's play here in this game and also this episode specifically?
Yeah, I really am starting to enjoy Mike a lot more, and I think his social game has been great, and the interaction with Omar, I think, was good. I mean, even if he was just doing it purely from a social and human perspective, I mean, it has great strategic ramifications down the line. On Mike, I've been giving it a lot of thought. I can't tell if he's just a Heather with a better edit from season 41. So, I mean, Heather was as purple gets, but from what I hear, she was very sociable. We didn't see it, and I don't know if Mike's doing the same, because I could imagine a world where Mike gets to the end and gets no votes, and everyone's like, "Well, what did you really do in comparison to whoever you're sitting next to?" I think he's getting a good edit, and he's being shown. The other thing you have to consider then is, why are certain aspects of this being shown? This interaction with Omar, is it to show that a good, warm-hearted interaction between two diverse sets of people? Is it just that? Is it actually because it's an indication of a great social game that he's playing? Is it actually an indication of Omar's social game? So there are lots of questions that come in, and I mean, even though it really painted Mike in the best light, and not necessarily, and wasn't really focused on Omar being super social and being able to make connections with everyone, that was more on Mike. It could just be because he's a 57-year-old cop from New Jersey, so you wouldn't expect him to be in that position.
Firefighter, I believe. Firefighter.
Sorry, firefighter.
Yeah.
So it's hard to figure out, why exactly are they showing this beyond just it being a really nice interaction. So yeah, I would like to see what Mike does next. I know he has a penchant for being hot-headed. So like the whole interaction with Chanel and how he got upset with Chanel, they both did the exact same thing. But, Mike had a very hard time letting it go. And that's not a good thing as the game dwindles down and you're going to have to start backstabbing more and more people. So, yeah, one to watch out for. But I could easily see him going out with a whimper as much as I could see him going far and doing well.
It's interesting you mentioned there, is this a great indication of Mike's game? We've seen Mike's social game, I feel like, throughout this whole season. He's connecting with Jonathan, Roxroy, all these different people. It does look like he wants to get like a strong guys alliance going together. I know the internet will melt down, and specifically Twitter, if that happens. But, he's got a few people that he's trying to pull together there. And Omar, throughout the whole season, has been very open to share his religion with others. We saw that scene earlier, which I think is really great. And I just want to commend this cast for being what looks to be really decent human beings out there and embracing all these differences. I think this is when people asked for diversity in the cast. They wanted this, not just diversity in ethnicity, but diversity in religion, diversity in their outlook on life, everything encompassing. And I feel like whatever they did this season to cast these people, hats off to them. The edits magnificent as well. I've seen the numbers, and you wouldn't believe how well split everybody is at the moment in regards to the content that they're getting, which for us as an audience is a lot more enjoyable because we don't know, is Mike a true contender, or is Mike just a great big character here this season that's not going to go all the way? But it's interesting because I agree with you. You can't let emotions drive you when you make these decisions in regards to who you're going to vote out. And I think that it went a little bit deeper here this episode, Jake, than just the Chanel vote, Chanel voting for Mike. I also think that it had to do with Chanel betraying that alliance with her and Daniel and Jenny, and voting Jenny out in the beginning. I think this was a much deeper than what we probably even realized. And it's not just this one vote against Mike. It was, you betrayed me twice because you said you were going to do something. You ended up doing something different when you were in Shipwheel Island. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of content from Chanel's perspective and Mike's perspective after the season. What did you think about this? Do you think that it goes a bit deeper, or do you think it is truly just that one vote that he couldn't forgive her on?
I really can't tell. Intuitively, I want to think that it is deeper because it's just, I think it's really dumb to take that one vote that she cast against him so deeply because he voted for her in the exact same tribal council. She was the backup plan if Daniel played the shot in the dark, and he was her plan. So just you did the same thing to each other. Just accept it. Like, you're both playing the game. So it's a bit weird that he took that so personally when he was doing the exact same thing. Just accept that you're both have different plans for each other. Yeah, the whole Chanel, like, risking her vote and lying about it and like just messing up everything for Jenny in that one episode, that would be my biggest issue with her, because she tells you one thing and then does another. So you can't trust that. And if it really is that one vote that broke the camel's back for Mike, then that's a bit questionable.
Yeah, I'm worried for Mike long term if that is the case. Kiran.
Don't forget they cast people who would take offense like that. Like that's
Yeah,
part
That's
and
true.
parcel of
That's very
making
true.
a great TV show.
Right.
Yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised if he will. And remember, it's also probably a case of loyalty, given his background. Like being part of a team and having your word and someone having your back is critical to being a firefighter. So
Mm.
I mean, he even makes mention of like, I'll take a bullet for everyone except Chanel. I'll step aside. I'll step aside,
Except
right?
he said he would take a bullet for Lydia and then voted for
I was
her
gonna
in
say that. I was
episode.
gonna say
well, exactly. That's exactly it. So there's definitely a dichotomy when it comes to
you can't Survivor is not about definitives. You can't say I definitively will do this or I'll definitively do that. You've got to be able to mold and shape with the
Right.
game, and that's where the worry comes in. Can he mold and shape with the game? If somebody betrays him down the line, can he work with that person again? So there's a big question mark there. While we're on the subject of Mike, the last thing I really wanted to dive into here is that I do feel like strategically, for the better or the worse, he did have a very big impact on the vote here this specific episode, because people did want to go and change the vote up to Romeo at one point, and he brought them back to saying, hey, we can't do that because we will burn bridges with rocks, and we need rocks for our group to be strong later on in the game. So I do feel like strategically there's things that he can go back and say, I did have an influence in the direction of where votes went. I just don't know if Mike is and again, maybe I'm underestimating this guy again. He's been telling us the whole season, everybody keeps underestimating me because of how I look, but I'm a lot smarter, or I'm not, you can't put me in a box. And, I'm just thinking, is he good enough to articulate to a jury what he did at this point? Will he remember this? Will he be able to articulate it and make a case if he does get to the end? And your comment, Kiran, about Heather being a massive social player, I think that a big part of, that win was due to the relationships that Heather built last season and helped Erica with in the game. I mean, Erica said that much in the finale when she was pitching to the jury, not taking anything away from her. It's going to be interesting to see how, I guess, the pointy end of the season is going to play up with Mike. But nonetheless, great, exciting character to have on the show. We do go to a reward challenge here, and the reward challenge is some great interesting things happening. Obviously, a lot of the times through challenges, you can sort of fast forward through some of them because they're kind of rinse and repeat, but this was exciting. We actually get that clue for the beware advantage in this again at the exact same spot where I believe Xander missed it last season. And Jeff says, and he talks to the camera, hey, we did this last season, which I believe was the first time he broke the fourth wall in this season. And he said, let's have a look and see if somebody's going to miss this again. I'll be disappointed if they do it. Some crazy, interesting things happen here with Marianne not getting the rock to be in a team. And Drea saying, hey, I don't like PB and J. I'm happy to sit out and let Marianne participate. And she didn't realize, Kiran, but this is the thing that was going to give her all that power here to sit out there and get the clue. For us as viewers, we always think, hey, this is the most obvious thing to look out for, idols and clues when you're in the middle of challenges. How difficult is it to stay focused and tapped into the possibility of these things? Because obviously we're seeing two different seasons here with two very different outcomes.
Yeah, it's wait, what exactly was the question?
So the question is, like, as a viewer, we think it's like the easiest thing in the world to go out there and find a clue. Like you expect there to be a clue if you've watched Survivor before. But last season, that did not happen. So clearly, it's not as easy as everybody thinks it is, and you can easily miss it. So if you're out there on the challenge, how clued on are you looking for these things? Is this something that you were consciously thinking of? Do you think certain players just has that X factor about them that look for these opportunities and things while they're out there? Or what do you think makes it so that, I guess, we get two different outcomes from two different seasons here? And Drea actually does find this.
So, yeah, I mean, when I was alone, definitely was always looking. So I remember being out of one of the immunity challenges and looking on the bench, and I think someone else had been knocked out before me, and they're like, no, don't stress, I've already looked, there's nothing here. So you're always looking. When you're playing a challenge, you don't even think about it. So like the shots of Drea being hesitant to actually pull the beware advantage out from under the bench, she really didn't have to stress. Like no one's even considering it at that point. You're so focused on winning. But you're also very tired and sleep deprived. So I can imagine how a Xander might not even think about it at that point, because the elements really do get to you. And sometimes it could be right in front of your face, and you just in that moment have a lapse. The question that I guess we're all trying to answer is, did Drea really just not like peanut butter that much that she wanted to sit out, or was she actually looking for an advantage? Now, in her confessional, she says that she really just didn't like peanut butter. And then fair play to her. I mean, she stumbled upon an advantage, which is great. But I'd love to think that she sat out because she wanted to have a look at what was under that bench. And it's actually, if you think about it, the real loser is Marianne, not just because she didn't get that advantage, but if someone says, I'm willing to sit out so that you can eat, and if you say no, like, are you compromising your own position here? Are people going to be like, oh, are you looking for an advantage? Is that why? Like, what's the reason behind it?
Jury management or something like that, because look at Sarah Lucina. She got absolutely lambasted. I guess it's a different level of game when you're playing against winners. Everybody knows what's up when you're making those moves. But yeah, I agree. I was a little bit concerned for her that she made such a bold move here in this specific moment, but everybody seemed to be completely okay with it. It doesn't look like there was any backlash from what we could see. And Marianne even said, hey, I'll do you a solid in the future. So that could be enough reason, Jake, to keep Marianne a little bit longer so that hopefully she wins something in the future and repays the favor.
As long as she's not at dreams. Can we count that as a fifth advantage?
A fifth advantage.
I was going to say, you were saying that maybe the other players might see it as jury management. That is exactly what happened last season with Xander. I don't think they explicitly stated it on the show, but in the postseason interviews, some players did say that Xander came off as a bit disingenuous when he chose to take Erica's place, which was interesting that it happened in the exact same challenge 2 seasons in a row that they switched places. That's kind of crazy luck, but it seems like Dre is okay. Didn't seem like anyone really batting an eye about it.
No, it definitely looked okay to me. Also, in this challenge, obviously, we get more confirmation that Jonathan is an absolute beast when it comes to anything endurance-wise, anything swimming-wise. It's so interesting seeing him in these team challenges just absolutely dominate. Fair play to Lindsay. She kept up with him throughout that first portion of the challenge, which is very impressive. So the real question here is, does Lindsay actually have that gas in the tank to actually compete for these immunities at a very high level? Is she holding back, or is this just the case that it's a different thing that she's doing out there that I guess suits different strengths that people have when it comes to challenges, and that the immunities is very different compared to the team portions of the challenges that we've seen so far? But it was impressive to see Jonathan clutches it from the end, throws in all of those baskets and proves that he can even replace Kobe Bryant or somebody in a basketball team. Who would have known? The guy really is an absolute beast. But Omar was probably the shock here that he nearly pulled it out for his team as well and just sadly lost out in the end. But they get their PB and J. And then the only confessional that I've sort of noticed we get from Jonathan in recent times, Kiran, is when he talks about how much he eats at home, what his workouts consist of. It's interesting, in the beginning of the season, myself and Jake really underestimated Jonathan. We thought he would be a typical meathead jock coming in, talking about his pull-up records and all those kind of things. His edit is kind of regressing a little bit back more to those very, I don't know, it's cookie cutter type of edits for me, or cookie cutter confessionals. It's not really about strategy so much and things like that. Do you feel like we are starting to see a little bit of a decline in Jonathan here, or do you think that this probably sets us up for when Jonathan finally goes on a run? Because I see a lot of similarities between him and a cast member that was in your season. I mean, they both were called Aquaman at different times. They both didn't win immunities from the start, but who knows? Could he repeat history in a completely different iteration of the show? Because again, here he's vulnerable and nobody's looking at him.
Yeah, I almost think the downward spiral is coming soon. Is my guess, and that doesn't mean he's going to go out soon, but he, being someone who's so strong at team challenges and is fairly sociable, you're always going to be fairly well insulated in the team portion, or the tribe portion of Survivor. Now that you're at merge, the pressure is going to be on you, and he's been aware of it, but it's going to be building and building and building, because once Tori is gone, and if Tori goes, the the 8 will have less numbers to get rid of, and everyone's going to look at Jonathan and be like, well, guys, if Tori went on a run of 2, Jonathan could go on a run of 300. We're going to have to do something about it. And then, the pressure is going to be on him, and they keep talking about food. So it's one of two things, right? Either he's going to steal all the food, or he is going to get into fights with people about food. And so I saw a note from Chanel out of her exit interview about Jonathan and it made me think, like, she's not a fan of him and we don't know why. So again, I have a feeling it centers around food, and he's talking about food a lot because they're going to set it up. Either he's going to be like, cool, I'm going to stop providing, you must all starve and go and get rid of me, or something else. Like, that's just the sense I get. He has been speaking about food a lot. I think we all know it's like 18 eggs and 9 pieces of cheese. Like, how why are we hearing that so often?
The parallels between him and the cast member on your season are getting stronger.
Right?
Well, there are so many
there's
so many parallels, like Brinification here. Welcome to the live stream, and Richard, welcome to the live stream as well. Says Kiran is a perfect guest, winning first 2 individual immunities like Tori did in her season. So there's a few different things here. Like Tori is an interesting character because I feel like coming into this, she really, really needs these immunity wins early on in the season because she is in the outs. I don't necessarily feel, and I could be wrong here, that you needed both of those wins so early. I felt like you were really well insulated. How difficult is it to hold back, I guess, when you get into an immunity situation from trying to go out there and win? Because GameBot 101, you go out there and play the game. You don't need to win, or you don't want to win too early. In her case, she's in a different position. She has to win. And I'm not too sure if she fully appreciates how much danger she's in, because the immunity gives her a false sense of safety at this point where the numbers are telling her where to vote. So I think she may even think she's kind of more in with them than what she is. She voted correctly, I believe, this last vote.
Yeah, if she didn't win the immunity challenge, she would have been in massive trouble. I think Chanel had more people that were willing to vouch for her in that tight group of 8, whereas Tori, it's few and far between, if any. That does mean, though, she is more game ready than anyone else, and I think coming out of these 2 immunity challenges where she's known it's been, like win or get voted out, I think if she loses the next one, she will be in the perfect position to at least try and set up her arguments and try and, maybe throw a Romeo under the bus, because she has been in that position, I mean, pretty much the entire game that she has played. So she is very well adept at pulling herself out from the bottom. At some point, it will come to an end. But if she can just stick around for 2 or 3 more votes and wait for that big group to start fracturing, she could easily slip through the cracks. So I definitely can see that there is room for Tori to go far. It's just how she navigates the next 2 or 3 votes. She definitely had to win those immunity challenges. And, someone like me, I definitely, when I look back, I'm like, I definitely put a bit of a target on my back. I actually think I still could have mitigated it. When I look at how the game played out, I would never have foreseen going up against like such a huge challenge beast. And that's really what was mine doing, not winning 2 immunity challenges up front. However, if you don't have to, I wouldn't advise it. But it's hard when you're thinking, I could be gone tomorrow, and jeepers.
You don't know. You're in the fishbowl. You're not outside of it. You don't know. Like, people are telling you they've got your back and this is the alliances. But at the end of the day, until the votes are read, right, you don't know if they're turning on you, if they're trying to blindside you, and if they're onto your game. What's interesting, though, for me is I sort of wondered about this, Jake. You've got Tori winning these 2 immunities now, which obviously grows her target in the game quite a lot. Does this now incentivize people like Jonathan, especially Jonathan, to try and keep her around for a little bit longer? And how ironic is it that she was the one calling Jonathan out because he was going to win all the immunities, prior to him going to the merge, and now she's the beast on this season?
Yeah, we think back to that challenge where she called him out. You have to think, was she the only one that said anything? Or were there others?
Both her and Drea mentioned it to their teams, yeah. But she was the only one who publicly vocalized it, if that makes sense. Right. Which again shows, like, Tori's got the makings of a great player. I feel like there's a great player there somewhere in her, but she
She's
doesn't know
got
when to
some
stay quiet.
self-awareness.
Yeah, exactly.
She's
She's
got, yeah.
I mean, even how she confronted Roxroy when he got back and changed time. I mean, I know it put her in a tough position,
yeah.
but you're not doing any favors by calling him out on it. Like people are just like, why are you like everyone? If everyone else
Yeah.
understands, you just nod your head and be like, yeah, that was a great decision. I understand, and you can curse them on the inside.
This episode here, she gets a little bit of information, Jake. She runs to different people and carries information around. Again, does not know when to stay quiet. Like, how frustrating is it when you watch someone like Tori out there and you think, man, she's got everything going for her, but she just lacks that little bit to make her a great player.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I think she just kind of rubs people the wrong way with her. I think she just kind of causes chaos by just kind of being there. I don't know. It's just, like, it's just like her vibe.
I completely agree.
Yeah,
And she's
I
a
don't know.
psychologist. I wouldn't want to go to her practice. Jeepers, she's gonna call my family and be like, listen, this is what your son said about you.
Dobbing on you.
As a parent, how could you have done this? This is why he has all these issues. Yeah,
I found it funny, you know, with her being a psychologist, when she came into the season, one of the observations I made, she's like, oh, people tell me there's secrets for a living, all this kind of stuff. I'm like, they pay you for that. These people are not paying you to tell you their secrets. Like, you're overestimating your ability to get a good read on people and for them to open up to you. It's just a different environment. And I always find it funny when people lack that, you know, that self-awareness.
If anything, I think having a profession where she has to keep secrets has just made her more inclined to divulge them now. She's like, this is the one chance I have to say whatever I want. I'm going to take advantage of it.
I've wanted to tell people all these things for so many years, and now I finally get to.
I hope the clients are not watching this. Like, the clients must be sweating bullets right now, thinking, "Man, did she tell on me? You know, does other people know about this stuff? You know, yeah. I mean, she like I said, I mean, it's so tough. I know she's a massive fan, Kiran. She played in Sequester before she went out to go play this, so she's done other things. Like, she studies this game, and I think as a fan it can be hard when you go out there. You think about the TV show maybe too much, and like how people want to perceive you as someone that's going around wheeling and dealing and wanting to be a character on the show. But being a character on the show doesn't always mean that you're actually going to go out there and win the show, and it's very rare that you get a great character and also a winner almost at the same time. I sometimes feel like it's counterproductive when you're trying to make a good TV show that people will love. You're thinking of that as well as trying to win the show out there.
Yeah, it's and that's why you remember the great characters who win, because it's not often. You do have to be somewhat more muted to win. I find most of the times you need to be able to rein yourself in, and that's counterproductive for a great TV character. If anything, you need to keep expanding out. Like I always say, if they say that the camera adds 10 pounds, it diminishes about 300% of your character. So it's really, you have to be over the top or really crazy to even just come across as entertaining. That's the truth of it. It's you have to generally be doing something that's rubbing people the wrong way to get a good laugh on camera. It's a weird one.
Yeah, and you'll know, because I mean, you don't, not just Survivor wise, but being someone that's a comedian and have to do performing and that, like, I guess that translates even to that. Like, you have to really go out and put on a show for people to be interested and to even find your jokes funny.
Oh yeah, it's it takes a while to get used to. Like, you're having to just overreacting, and on camera it comes across as being just a normal reaction. Like, jeepers, Kiran was surprised. In my mind, I'm just like, flip. I mean, I'll never win an Oscar. It's the worst piece of acting anyone's ever seen. But for the camera, you have to be like, what? No, and everyone's like, oh yeah, that's a normal reaction. So
I feel like that's just Tori's normal reaction. Like, she's at that level all the time. That's just her. I don't feel like Tori's got the ability to turn it on and off, almost like Marianne. There's like only one level to them.
It's funny also, just thinking about Tori, just her deep, genuine dislike for Roxroy. As a psychologist, I'm like, can't you just figure out why he's rubbing you the wrong way and just turn it off? Play the game. You can't. You're a massive fan. You want to go far. You can't hold this grudge forever. At some point, it would be great to be like, Roxroy, I know we've had our differences. Let's work together. But she doesn't want to.
I mean,
that's what makes great TV. Yeah, she called him a narcissist, which again, the psychologist saying that on national TV is probably not great for future business.
Right. Can you imagine being his wife watching that? Like, oh, guess I'm married to a narcissist. The psychologist said so. So
That's quite rough.
Yeah, it's rough. But I mean, Rock's clearly not a fan of her as well. Like these two just they don't mix. That's like all in water. And he's very happy when she has to give up her immunity idol here as well. But obviously she's gonna win it back. But let's track back a little bit here to I think the most interesting part of the whole episode. Drea's got the clue. She opens it up. There's a clue that says you now need to go to the water well, go 5 paces away from it to get a clue. And Survivor US continues to do this. They bring new aspects. Sometimes it's hit and miss. But in this case, what did you think, Kiran, of the risk in getting this idol, putting your hand down the paint and being full of red paint afterwards, and the panic that must have been on Drea's mind as soon as she got that, thinking, how do I wash this? Because you can't just put your hand straight in the water because you'll be contaminating the water for everybody else there. So you've got to very quickly clear the evidence and then go back to camp. Like, it's stressful enough picking up an idol in front of potentially everybody. Now you've got to also do this. I loved it personally. I thought it was so creative, this twist and the spin on how to find an idol.
I thought it was excellent. I really, really enjoyed it. I mean, the other when I first saw Beware Advantage, I was like, oh no, not again. Like I'm tired of soccer makes me
phrases
and broccoli or trees, and I can't even remember half of them, but they're just so ridiculous, and they actually take you out of the game when you hear it, because you're like, well, this person now is forced to actively just ruin their game by sounding ridiculous. This was great. If it was anyone else other than Drea, who is just cool as ice, they would have put their hand out there, and the reaction on camera would have been, out of this world. They would have been. Imagine if it was Marianne, just the
Tony Vlachos.
The
Can you imagine Tony Vlachos? Like, if he had to put his hand down there,
he
probably
would have run straight up a tree and be like, "Well, now I have to hide in the tree and,
for the rest of the day.
For the rest of the day, because I don't know how to get rid of this." And probably would start licking the paint off. That's almost what they would have imagined. And even with Drea, who is so calm and collected and doesn't betray him, she's like, oh, there is paint on my arm, I guess I should take it off. It was still great to watch, and I love that. It's if someone is caught, you get to watch them spin a lie, right? And you have this excitement that builds up. So I really enjoyed it. It was a short payoff. You don't need to have this payoff that lasts 4 or 5 episodes. It was in the moment. Yeah, it was great. I would love to see it again. I thought it was a 10 out of 10 in terms of a new way of doing things.
The only thing that would have made it better if that was oil-based paint or water-based paint, and she couldn't get it off, and she had to go back to camp with a red arm.
Just have to chop that arm off.
Chopped it, done for the rest of the game. Obviously, Tori notices this and isn't very subtle about it either, so that continues to create that conflict or that friction between the two of them. But Jake, we now find out that we've got the knowledge is power advantage back in the game. Like, I loved how they put this thing together and how it was found, but I know as a fandom we aren't that high, I guess, on the knowledge is power advantage. And especially in a season where it's so easy to know who has the other idols. And I guess Drea just being the perfect person who already knew it. I think everybody out there knows who's got the idols. I don't think that kind of information with saying phrases won't make its way to everybody out there. I think everybody's aware of it. So I just really, really despise this advantage. It's great that Drea's got it because I think she's an exciting player to watch for the rest of the season. But if I'm being completely unbiased and I take my Drea love out of this, I don't like that advantage making its way back to the game. And I'm hoping that they don't bring it back in the future. How did you feel when you saw that as the advantage that she got here?
I completely agree. When I saw a couple episodes ago when Lydia and Roxroy went and neither of them risked their vote, I was like, oh, great. Okay, we don't get to see the knowledge is power, because that was where it was placed last season. So I was extra disappointed to see that they are like, oh, okay, no one got it there. Okay, we'll just put it in a little bit later. My issue is that this would have been such a great advantage 2 seasons ago, before 41, when Rick Devens and Ben Driebergen are finding an idol every episode to get their way in, and you just need something to just counter it. And it's like, if you even suspect that they have it, you can just ask, hey, Ben, do you have an idol? Oh, yep, here you go. It would have been, yeah, even then, I actually think it's a bit overpowered because you kind of just stole any, last ditch effort that the person has, but it's just so egregiously bad, in my opinion, in this specific season, especially when you put it in the hands of Drea, who already has advantages and she herself got the idol, so then knows everyone else that has it.
Kiran, I don't know if Jeff listens to the fans. Like, I know Naidoo, we all know him very well. He doesn't listen to everything because you can't listen to everything. It's impossible. You've got to go out there and do your own show. But I feel like he's got a pulse on the fandom and what people like and what they don't like. With Jeff, it sometimes feels like he does not pay attention to these things because the nullifier was absolutely hated when it made its appearance in Survivor by, I would say, the online community, and I've always been okay with the nullifier because I felt like there is a certain element of skill in trying to find out who has the idol and then playing it correctly. So it's not, in my opinion, too overpowered, even though it probably promotes people keeping the idol a secret, which I've always been a fan of, not telling other people unless you absolutely have to. But now we've got this twist in the game that basically blows people's games up because they've got to say these phrases, and they make it so easy and simple for someone not just to nullify their idol, but to actually steal it and get their hands on it, which I believe is such an overpowering advantage. Maybe the most powerful advantage we've ever seen in Survivor, just behind the super idol. How do you feel about this, advantage as a previous player? Is this something that you would have, like, I guess you would have loved to have had it in your hands, but if you were in the game and you didn't get it and it was used against you, how would you feel about an advantage such as this, I guess, out there?
No, I agree with both of you. I would be very, I'd feel very hard done by because it's overpowered. There's no skill in it at all. I think that they built it in mind thinking, well, the risk is how will you know if someone has an idol? Well, as you've pointed out, it's very easy to know if someone has an idol, and it takes out the additional skill of having to play it on the day that someone is going to play an idol, much like the idol nullifier. So it's completely overpowered. It's on the other side of the coin. Well, it's not as strong as the super idol, but it's very, very close. So yeah, and to your point with Jeff, no, like LaRue was a fan of Survivor first before he became a producer of the show and director. Whereas Jeff, I'm sure Jeff feels like he is Survivor. I mean,
he created
built the
it.
show.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
like
he didn't create it, but he built it to where it is now, and he's
exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm sure for him, it's like, well, I'm just going to do what I do because I've built it. I've helped build it up to this point, so I must be doing something.
And we're all
right.
like, listen, we're all very thankful of Jeff for doing what he's done. Like, I mean, without Jeff, would it even have gotten to South Africa? Would you even have had the opportunity to go play? And would it have blown up in the same way? I don't know. And we've got to give respect for that. But I do feel like it's hit and miss sometimes with Jeff, but at least he's willing to throw things at the wall and see what sticks. So I'm just hoping he listens to the fans on this one. I don't want to see the knowledge is power back. I feel like it's one of the worst things he's brought in, and there's been some bad stuff in some of the recent seasons, but really just not a fan of this one. Prior to the vote, there's going to be a few bits of people that are going to scramble here. We know that Chanel and both Romeo are on the outside. Romeo, as a player here at the bottom, plays a very scrambly, messy game. And I'm finding their relationship between Drea and Romeo so interesting. I mean, Romeo was the coach that was training Drea how to become a better Survivor player, before the merge, Kiran. Now suddenly they just can't see eye to eye. Do you think that the warning signs were there a lot earlier for Romeo and he should have picked up on this? What do you think of him specifically in this game? Like, how did it go wrong for him based on the edit that we've seen so far? Because I feel like this is one of those missing chronicles of Survivor 42. Romeo's game was solid and suddenly it's just tanked.
Yeah, it's very confusing. They have a confessional in there where he mentioned something about merge becoming an individual game, and then all of a sudden, it's utter madness and he's super paranoid. And I think it probably has been a slow descent into chaos for Romeo, and we've just missed that. And I think a large part of that is I can't remember when last his tribe went to tribal council before the merge, and obviously there'll be missing portions of his story because of that. But yeah, I can't figure out what's been going on, but he's not doing himself any favors at this point. the good thing for him is that he has the ability to correct it. He has the personality. He just needs to snap out of whatever's got him thinking this way. Whether he does that or not, I have no idea. But I'm enjoying seeing Chaos Romeo. It's injecting a
It's
bit
entertaining.
of extra flavor. Otherwise I think the strong eight would just knock them off one by one.
What I find very interesting, Jake, is there seems to be this real dislike between Hai and Romeo at this point, and that kind of boils over even into Tribal Council, where we saw a bit of a nasty side to Hai here. And I say this knowing, obviously I've had the privilege of talking to people like Kiran and other Survivor players, that everything becomes so much more emotionally charged when you're playing the game. So obviously there's things that we're not seeing here, but they were seen as, both two proud gay men who made it through to the merge, talking about their experience not that long ago in the show, which I thought was such a great moment on screen. And suddenly they're gunning after each other in this way. Do you feel like a bit of this downfall for Romeo is that he has been trying to go separate from Hai and, try and take Hai's confident leadership role that he sees himself in within the power dynamics of the tribe? Do you think there's a bit of friction of that leadership role that Romeo wants and he's not getting it, and Hai sees him as a threat?
I think what it might be is, they had that deep talk with each other in the merge episode. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Hai said something along the lines of, I'll try to look after you in this game. And I believe Romeo said, like, I was on the wrong side of the votes. I was told to write down a name, and that was not the name that ended up being the majority. So maybe he feels a bit betrayed and felt like, he kind of took advantage of Romeo opening up to him. I mean, I know that would upset me if I were in his shoes. And then immediately after, he's got Tori telling him that his name's floating around. I mean, the paranoia, it's going to happen to everyone. I don't really know why they're saying that he's so overly paranoid. I think that we see this every season. Someone hears their name and they get upset, which is perfectly reasonable. You don't want to go home. And I think he wants to paint that target on Romeo because that's who he wanted. I think he saw a bit more potential with Chanel. And so it is a bit interesting how it kind of devolved into this rivalry between them. We see Romeo voting for Hai at the end, which that could just
Only
be
one.
kind of he was the only one. So it could have been just like more of a personal vote when he knew that he wasn't going home. Very
If you're in
interesting.
that spot, Kiran, if you're in that spot, you've got two people now at the bottom that most likely is between Tori and Romeo. Who do you think is going to be the bigger threat in the game long term? Do you think that the known entity of Tori not being able to keep her mouth shut is something that is easier to work around, but then again, she's got that ability to win immunities? Or do you think this chaos that Romeo brings into the game is something that should be feared a bit more? Like if you were there, I know we only have what the edit shows us, but based on what we've seen, which way would you lean here for this next vote? Because they seem to be the two that are on the chopping block. I think Marianne, due to her move of sacrificing for Rice here this episode, which was an interesting moment we haven't spoken too much about yet, I think she's gotten a little bit of leeway here at the moment. I don't think she's next in line.
Yeah, I would go for predictability every single time. So with Tori, whatever I say, she's going to say to someone else, and she's easy to read. And yeah, she's an immunity threat, but I can also use that as a reminder. Like, okay, we're keeping her today, but we need to get rid of her soon because she can go on a run. So I would want to keep Tori around. With Romeo, the chaos, the paranoia, it's always hard to predict what they'll do next. 1 minute they'll keep a secret, the next minute they'll share a secret, the next minute they'll think you're after them. When you can't read what someone's going to do, it's you actually just become I guess hostage to whatever they feel next. And so I would always take predictability.
You sound kind of like Ranir. I know you had him on your podcast not that long ago. So I believe he said something like, I can live with unpredictability in my life, not in the game of Survivor, because you want to be able to dictate where people go, or at least make calculated choices around where the best move for them will be next. But yeah, I guess interesting point of the game here. As a last talking point before we get into the vote here, they had the decision here to sit out for Rice. It was an interesting moment with Jeff sort of haggling and him being very annoyed by Chanel going in low and then him going in with 9 people. It's an interesting moment. I guess it comes down to, if you're out there, Kiran, and you're playing the game, do you sit out for Rice or not? Like, what did you think of the decision here for players to sit out? And then obviously there's a big thing made out of this season with it being one of the hardest seasons because they don't have Rice at camp. So they've actually got nothing outside of what they're winning in rewards, or if they go out there and forage for themselves.
Yeah, if it depends on the immunity challenge and my position. But if I'm in a fairly well insulated position or I know I'm not going to win it, if I just look at the challenge, I'm like, this is not for me, I'll sit out. Right? It doesn't hurt to carry a bit of favor, even if it's 1 extra percent. That could go far. I'm not really of the school of thought that anything can happen. I know my own physical capabilities. I'm not going to win a swim against Chappies, unless a shark comes and veers him off course. And even then, I still back Chappies to beat the shark. So it's one of those. I don't think it's a bad thing if it gets you a small thanks with your tribe.
I think for someone like Marianne, who's like clutching onto anything that she can get to win some sympathy with her tribe, it wasn't a bad move. And most people, for some other reason, because of her big personality and her emotions being out there, I do think, underestimate her strategic game and her thinking here. And they look past that as just saying, classic Marianne, trying to, do all of this for us. And she's got the waterworks going. And she says here that she uses emotions as a tool in this game, where a lot of people look at that as a weakness, which I thought was a very interesting insight that she had. We've got Brinification here in the live stream saying that they feel like Drea and High are playing a losing game. They're leaving Tucker to have the majority. We'll take them out later. 2 Vati out back to back, which I do think that is a risk for both Mike and High, and that both High and Mike are playing an emotional game at the moment, and that is dictating, I guess, a little bit of their decision making when it comes to who they're voting out next in the game. So looking at the spread here as we close off this podcast, we're just going to go around the table and talk about who we think are the top 3 players after this week's episode in the game. And what we'll do is, Kiran, if you want to go and mention your top 3 and have like a little bit of a chat about why you would place each one of these in your top 3, we'll go with Jake next, and then I'll sort of close us off here.
Yeah, okay, perfect. So I think I'll try get in order, but I know the 3 based off what we've seen so far. I think Omar's in a really good position. I think he has good social awareness and strategic skills, so he's someone I'd watch out for. I would also then say High, though I'm a bit worried that High might be a bit of an emotional person down the line, but he's navigated himself well, and he seems to be very aware of how people perceive him, which is always very, very important in the game. And then last would be the advantage queen, Drea. I think she's just in an incredible position given, everything she has. She is someone who is very hard to read and comes across as a bit cold, but you don't necessarily get confessionals of people saying, Drea is so standoffish. And so that also can be an indication that she has legs for the game. Yeah, so that would be my 3.
I was going to say, and this, you reminded me around Drea, I love the pure villainous vibes that I'm getting from Drea here this season. Like we always look back at the favorite season of all time, which is Heroes versus Villains, and we think, what if there is ever a second, Heroes versus Villains season? I feel like there's been so many people that have been afraid to be villainous on these reality TV shows now, with social media followings and backlash that can come from that. People play a little bit of a safer game, but I find her to be a very fun villainess this season. And what she's saying to the camera and her evil laugh that they keep cropping in there, almost like Chantel's song, I just think we've got 2 great villainesses in the last 2 seasons, which is great for the show if they ever did go back in that direction and they wanted to bring these people back to the game. So I love those choices. I'll give you a minute to think about the order of those choices while we go over to Jake. And Jake, give us your 3 here for this episode.
So I have a very similar list to Kiran. At 3, I have Drea. Number 2, I've got Mike, and number 1, I've got Omer.
Right.
And I mean, if you want me to go ahead,
there you go. Yeah, especially Mike. I guess
Yep.
since we have, I guess Mike and Omar are both in. Anything you want to say about them in regards to why you put them as high as you did?
Yeah, so Omer is a bit subject to change, but at the moment, I mean, he's playing pretty optimally. I mean, I don't know how he could be playing any better at this point. Everyone thinks he's with them. I mean, he's got information coming from all angles. I mean, what more can you really want from him at this point? But like I said, very subject to change. If anyone sniffs it out, then it could come crashing down pretty quickly. With Mike, although I may disagree with his reasoning for this vote, he did ultimately get his way, and it's pretty clear that he has a big say in that big alliance, which is good for this twist coming in next episode, where hopefully he's with, at least 1 or 2 people from his alliance, and seems like they'll kind of go along with whatever he wants. So it seems like he might get his way again next episode. And then with Drea, I mean, we all know she's loaded with the advantages right now. I mean, she could end up with 3 idols if the amulet plays out the way she wants, getting out High and Lindsay. She already has 1. She could steal Marianne or Mike's idol and end up with 3, which would just be ridiculous. But yeah.
It's interesting hearing the names you guys have put out there. I think I'm going to repeat quite a few of them here. I am going to put in number 3 for this week, Mike. Number 2, I'm going to put Omar, and number 1, I'm going to have Drea. Sorry, no, I'm going to change that around. Drea at number 2, and I've got Omar at number 1. Now, the reason that I make that slight change between Drea and Omar is I feel like Drea, pound for pound, is the player with the most firepower in the game, and I've given her 3 episodes in a row of being number 1. I could have easily stick with her here this episode. The one thing I'm fearful of is that I don't know if she values relationships and alliance members in a way that she should. And she's not playing that numbers game. And I feel like very few players in the history of the show have been able to just power their way to the end and win the game based on that alone, like Ben Driebergen or Mike Holloway winning his way to the end of the game. I feel like you need people to come on that journey with you. And I feel like she's very willing to let people go here. Like Romeo is someone that literally wanted to coach her to the win. He wanted to lift her up as a strong female in the game to win the season, and she's willing to throw that person away that's never going to vote for her. So I'm a little bit worried about that, but you cannot deny she's got all of the tools at this stage and can definitely have an explosive game that may possibly, if she plays all of those idols, she's going to be close to the top 3 there already just by playing the idols and the advantages and things like that she's got. Mike, I felt like he got his way with the vote this episode, so I always like to give someone that we see in the edit direct the vote in a certain way some recognition, so I feel like having him in the top 3 is due to that. And then Omar, I think that if Brinification is right, I see the game shaping up in a very similar way. I think there's a reason we saw so much of Taku prior to the merge. I still think Taku is going to stick together. And even though there's so much craziness happening now, the longer Marianne stays in the game, the more options you give to Omar. And Omar loves his options. I mean, he voted with Marianne this episode. Marianne was the other person who voted for Romeo. Omar voted for Romeo. So I think he's still got an in with her and can pull the Taku tribe together when they need to take a lead in this game and go to the end. So I would not be surprised to see many from the Orange tribe make the finale here. So that would be my reasoning for those. Has that given you a little bit of time here, Kiran? You mentioned Omar, High, and Drea. What would be your order?
So is it 3 for the most points?
3's most. Well, the third place is least points. Second place, second most points, and first gets the most points.
So I'll speak from. So first place would be Omar.
Mm-hmm.
You've further convinced me. 2 would be Drea, and then 1 High.
Yeah.
No, sorry.
So we basically
the other way around. 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Yeah. So
the most points go to Omar. Yeah.
Yeah, so Omar, Drea, and High. So we're basically, all 3 of us are kind of seeing the game almost similar. There's just one difference in who we give credit to in High and Mike, but they're interchangeable at this stage, I guess, in regards to who had more influence in making the vote happen here for this episode. So overall, I thought that was a great episode. I'm still very excited to see how this season is going to play out in Kiran. It's been it's been a pleasure to have you on here and get your expertise on the show and your views of how things are going over in Survivor US. I know that you have got some things going on currently outside of, just the normal Survivor world. Do you want to plug a little bit of what you're doing on your podcast and what it's about for people that may want to go and listen to that, and where they can follow and listen to your podcast?
Yeah, thanks so much, Chris. It's been really great chatting to you again. I've recently started a podcast. It's called The Self Starters. It's about people who take ideas and turn them into successful and consistent action. I'm ironically exceptionally bad at taking ideas and creating something from it. So I'm speaking to a lot of people like that. Currently, a lot of ex-Survivor players. Got to tap into your network. And it can be found on all major streaming platforms. So your Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. So and if anyone wants to find me, they can find me on Instagram or Twitter. Just search for me. There are not many Kiran Naidoos out there.
Yeah, definitely helps. You're one of a kind. So go have a look at the podcast. I haven't had the opportunity to listen to it myself, but it sounds very, very interesting to me. I always love these self-improvement type of podcasts and things like that in regards to how you can be more effective and productive on your daily life. So it sounds like it's kind of in that genre. So I'll definitely go and have a listen to that. As always, guys, for those that were here in the live, thank you so much for joining us and asking a few questions. If you're jumping into this quite late, please comment below. Let us know what you think of our top threes, and any thoughts or points that we maybe didn't discuss. Put that in the comment below. Consider subscribing. We've got a lot of content dropping at the moment. I am doing exit interviews for Australian Survivor, Brains versus Brawns, almost said, Blood versus Water here. And we've got a lot of previous contestants coming on for that. And also the Challenge All-Stars 3 is now dropping. So we're starting to drop more and more content here for the Challenge All-Stars 3, which is really exciting. As always, guys, thank you and catch you next time.